On this week's program, Macho Mandolf makes mucho moronic mutterings about orcs. More speaking, more stupid at the Gnome Depot. Rob Kuntz sets X on fire. And Luke Hart lays an egg on the railroad. That's right, folks, it's Monday, and that means it's time for us to see who used intelligence as a dump stat in the TTRPG social media world. Before we get down to business there, please remember to like, subscribe, and share the video because it really helps the channel. The faster the channel grows, the faster we get to start working on the Dodge Dart, and the more people we can have better games with, regardless of what system they run. Also, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/drivinganddragons, where you can support the channel directly and get an automatic entry to win a car and have a say in the direction of the content of the channel. Finally, don't forget to comment below, even if it is only to inform me that you didn't like the video and that you didn't actually watch it. While I'd much rather have the great conversations that I see 90% of the time, any interaction is good interaction. So on with the show. We kick things off with Macho Mandolf misspeaking in the most moronic method. Once again, a member of the Bro SR has shown that they are more Appendix WWE and less Appendix N. He posted that people often ask what's so bad about AD&D 2E compared to 1E, and goes to cite directly from the Monster Manual, highlighting that orc communities range up to large, mostly underground cities as large as 20,000. Apparently this is some major issue, as orcs should only exist in small tribes or some such nonsense. Setting aside the wealth of 1E content that supports the 2E description of orc society, as well as the fact that the 2E resources posit that the 1E version is also very much an option for play, let's kick this square in the butt with the bro's own favorite boot. Appendix N, where you will find Lord of the Rings, the basis for the fantasy concept of orcs. You know, the stuff by J.R.R. Tolkien, where places like Angband were described as having orcs in such multitudes that the Noldor had never seen or imagined it. Things like vast hordes and unnumbered hosts issuing from places like Utumno, and even Saruman had over 10,000 orc soldiers, and that doesn't count women and children and such as that they are at Isengard. And that was described as a child's miniature play version of Sauron's fortress at Barad-dûr. So yeah, holding up large orc cities as some kind of proof that 2E ruined D&D is just idiotic. Speaking of idiotic, the Gnome Depot weighed in with an engagement farming question that is a classic example of idiocy that comes from a good place. He asked the question, can we all agree that multiclassing is metagaming? Well, we could. We could all also agree to slam our testicles in a sliding glass door. Doesn't make it particularly intelligent. The entire line of thinking is flawed on a few levels. First, it presumes that all metagaming is bad, which is untrue. When you get right down to it, considering class at all is metagaming. But being less literal here for a moment, developing your character to better fill their role in the party is at worst good metagaming. Or maybe there's some guy out there with 10 levels of car mechanic, 10 levels of comedian, and 5 levels of late night TV host. Ever met somebody like that? You know, it isn't even metagaming in many contexts. How many of us have learned how to do more than one thing? Many plumbers have a level in electrical work, concrete, and framing, because they also did those kind of jobs on job sites throughout their career. And this is to say nothing of the good old country boy with his mechanic, hunter, machinist, distiller multiclass. Multiclassing, like anything else, can come from questionable metagaming, but can also make perfect sense within the game as well. After all, your fighter may never be as deft as your rogue, but it makes perfect sense in-game for him to have maybe learned a thing or two about picking locks or popping traps just from working closely together with that rogue. This is just people looking for reasons to whine about how people play the game. If you don't like optimizers, don't play with optimizers, but don't sit there and try and blame it on multiclassing. Next out, Professional troll and the last remaining member of Gary Gygax's original D&D playtest party, Rob Kuntz, pissed off the world. I'm not going to go into the meat and potatoes of the debates itself here, but the long and short is that Victor, aka Stay Buff of Marshmallow Man, posted in a thread that while no one can police how others play, when discussing the game, the baseline assumption should be that we are discussing rules as written and not any kind of homebrew. And this is very much a fair statement that makes sense. You hear me say it all the time. Define your terms. If you're talking about something outside of the published written material, you need to make sure everyone's aware of that. But Rob overreacted in a big way. I get it. The one true way raw as law crowd is insufferable, and their position is largely indefensible, as the rules as written actually defeat their position numerous times throughout the various different books. It's only through mental gymnastics that things like Rule Zero can be shoved into their philosophy. But Kuntz laid in with numerous personal attacks and a veritable army of straw men that was totally uncalled for. His diatribe included various wars with the Bro SR, including Chief Nimrod B-Dubs, who rarely adds anything of value to a discussion, and it came with borderline accusations that people wanted a way to force everyone else to play their way. It also came with claims of massive egos and other attacks. And while some of this is both accurate and occasionally warranted, Kuntz certainly played himself this time, with OSR accounts from both sides of the fence calling him to task. Finally, this week we end on one of my personal favorite soapboxes, railroading. You want to know the biggest issue with railroading in TTRPGs? The simple fact that people can't seem to grasp the definition of a railroad. Enter Luke Hart of the DM layer. Great guy, lots of good videos. However, the only thing on his channel worse than his skits is his recent Actually Railroading is Good video. The concepts and content of the video are actually pretty decent. Good low-level GM advice that could really help newer GMs. However, his use of the term railroading is idiotic. Railroading is a complete stripping of agency without narrative cause. It is not presenting either or options to new players to guide them in the right direction, nor is it providing a clear path for players in-game to stop it from floundering. Life is full of situations where there are obvious choices and clearly defined options. Hell, life is full of situations where you don't get a meaningful choice. Just ask the protester who clearly wants to sit in the middle of the street and block traffic when angry drivers decide that he no longer has that option. By talking about, quote, light railroading, unquote, or otherwise using the term railroading to describe things like linear storyopaths or in-game forces acting to encourage the party to make certain decisions, the entire conversation gets muddled. People who maybe need that advice watch 10 seconds of the video before hitting the comments to talk about how railroading is never good, and it's a massive violation of agency, never learning that he wasn't actually talking about real railroading. People who want to discourage others from his otherwise good advice simply point out he is in favor of railroading. And perhaps worst of all, it perpetuates the idiocy that asking players anything other than "what do you want to do" is railroading. Generalization is important. So is understanding that virtually every rule has exceptions. Even rule -1, don't be a dick, sometimes needs to be ignored to address a situation. But railroading is not a generalization. It's a very specific thing that is bad for the game and has a specific definition that many either don't grasp or ignore, leading to stupidity like this. So what did I miss? What error in intellect was so egregious that it belongs on this list? You let me know, and I'll see you next time.